Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Hanhart 417ES Mocha Flyback date. This piece is a limited edition of 200 numbered pieces made in collaboration with Porsche Driver magazine. The watch is available from Hanhart.com in two versions. On the bracelet, the price is €2,890. On the leather strap, the price is €2,690 respectively. So firstly, let's look at the watch roll that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a genuine leather watch roll, which is housed inside an outer cardboard box, and the outer cardboard box is protected by this black cardboard sleeve. So one removes the sleeve. Good attention to detail, because on the lid to the outer cardboard watch box we can see the Hanhart logo and 1882 embossed. 1882 denotes the foundation of the brand, and Hanhart watches are currently made in Guttenbach in the Black Forest in Germany. So one removes the lid, pulls down the flap, and I'll take out the watch box and show it to you. So, genuine leather watch roll, and again, excellent attention to detail because we have the Hanhart logo and 1882 embossed. Two straps which secure onto two spigots or rivets, as you can see. Contrasting white stitching around the perimeter is flawless. Now, the scent of this genuine leather watch roll is absolutely gorgeous, and Hanhart deserve credit here because they could have taken the less expensive default option of just using a vinyl or PU leather watch roll to look like genuine leather, but this is actually genuine leather, and the scent is just absolutely fantastic. Flawless stitching around the perimeter. We have two flaps which overlap, and this does a good job of protecting the watch in shipping from any damage. Inside we also have two genuine leather straps which are secured by stainless steel poppers, and this does a good job of protecting the watch from moving around and being scuffed and scratched. And again, attention to detail is fantastic because in the lower right corner we also have Hanhart's 1882 embossed. The interior has a suede effect, very soft and supple, and it just looks good and feels good, and immediately one gets the impression that this 417ES Mocha Flyback date is a high quality piece made in Guttenbach in the Black Forest in Germany. So I really like the quality of the leather watch roll as an alternative to a plastic or cardboard watch box. With regards to items that come with the piece, it also comes with this certificate. So this is the limited edition certificate because, as I've detailed, this 417ES Mocha Flyback date is a limited edition of 200 numbered pieces made in collaboration with Porsche Driver magazine. So this details it, and if you look at the right hand side, you can see this is number 132 of 200 limited edition pieces. And on the reverse, we have a high definition image of the caliber used, which is the Sellita caliber AMT 5100M. One also gets this owner's instruction manual booklet, clear concise diagrams. The instructions are in English, and it details the operation of the movement used, which is the Sellita caliber AMT 5100M, and that is made by Sellita's manufacturer AMT department, and the manufacturer AMT department is the very best of Sellita. They manufacture their high-end movement, so excellent to see that included in this piece. One also gets this card, which is the warranty card. On the reverse, it details the reference of the piece, 417ES Mocha Flyback, date of purchase, reference number for the piece, and the serial number, which is the limited edition number 132 of 200 pieces, and it's also stamped with Hanhart with the website Hanhart.com. This piece is covered by a 2-year international warranty, which is correct, and the industry standard is mandatory for pieces in the mid-tier between €500 and €5,000 to have the industry standard 2-year international warranty, and at €2,890 on the bracelet, this is clearly a mid-tier piece between the aforementioned price points. So 2 years of warranty versus 12 months is good. And lastly, one also gets this Hanhart branded microfiber polishing cloth. I always think it's a nice touch to get a branded microfiber polishing cloth, irrespective of the price point of a piece. Now, as an alternative to the Oyster style bracelet fitted to the head of the piece, they do offer this 417ES Mocha Flyback date in an alternative version, as I've detailed. One can purchase it on the Oyster style bracelet or alternatively on this Bund leather strap. So we'll look at the Bund leather strap and then I'll detail the piece. This is chocolate brown, so it perfectly matches the mocha tone or coffee tone dial rather than it just being black. The scent of this leather is absolutely gorgeous, and it really is equal quality to the very best of Hirsch calf leather straps, or alternatively Horween shell cordovan straps, which are some of the best in the watchmaking industry. Excellent attention to detail because we have the original Hanhart logo embossed on one side, contrasting stitching on the underside. The underside is lined with Alcantara, which is rather like suede, and the Alcantara lining really does enhance comfort level and feel good factor because it feels very comfortable against the wrist. It's also very absorbent, so it soaks up sweat and perspiration, therefore enhances comfort level and feel good factor. In the centre we have the Bund panel. Now I'll explain the original purpose of these panels on Bund straps. Originally, watch cases were often made in brass, or alternatively brass which was nickel plated, and of course when the case came into contact with the wrist it could cause irritation. And to avoid the irritation and avoid the contact of the brass or nickel plated brass case coming into contact with the wrist, they added these panels to conventional leather straps, and the Bund style of strap therefore prevents the head of the piece touching the wrist when being worn. And of course now watches are often made in stainless steel cases, therefore it's not a problem, but that's the original purpose of Bund straps. It isolates the wrist from brass or nickel plated brass cases, thus diminishes irritation. But looking at the top of the strap, contrasting stitching around the perimeter, although it's thick, it's very soft and supple, so it's not going to require a lot of breaking in order to become comfortable. In terms of how soft and supple, it really does feel very similar to a Horween shell cordovan strap, which is tanned in Chicago, of course. Matte finish to it, lovely grain finish rather than being glossy finish. Had they used a glossy finish or an alligator pattern to it, of course it would have been more appropriate for a dress piece, but this is more appropriate for a sports piece or a daily wear piece due to the matte finish of it, and it is a credible alternative to the oyster style bracelet. Stainless steel buckle and tang. Now what I like about it is it's signed with high definition engraving with the original Hanhart vintage logo. Now to put that into perspective, if you look at the wings logo on the micro adjustment clasp on my 415ES Panda, you can see this is the wing logo that they were using 50 years ago, and I really like this. It's aesthetically pleasing, but this has a more heritage aesthetic because on the head of the piece, on the dial and also on the clasp, this buckle and tang, you can see it has the original Hanhart logo, the vintage logo which they were originally using from their foundation, and of course this will particularly appeal to purist Hanhart collectors. So very nice vintage aesthetic. Bust satin finishing is flawless to the top side, underside and flanks. No sharp edges to the top edge or the undercuts to the flanks, and it's been deburred on the corners with bevel. So it's a very well finished buckle and tang, and the matte satin finishing looks better than mirror polishing for a daily wear piece or a sports piece. So I really like the Alcantara lining on the underside rather than it just being grained leather. It does feel very soft and supple, and the top side has this lovely chocolate brown tone to it. The mocha tone matches the dial. Also good attention to detail because we have quick release stainless steel spring bars. Now with padded leather straps like this, with standard spring bars, because they're thick straps, it can be difficult to get the spring bar tool in between the edge of the strap and the case without slipping off the spring bar and scuffing and scratching the lugs. We're all familiar with that problem. But by using quick release stainless steel spring bars like this, it negates the need for a spring bar tool in the absence of pierced lugs, holes in the flanks. And this makes it easy to exchange the bracelet for the strap. So this is very good to see, correct decision made. And I really like the finishing of it. 21mm as per the oyster style bracelet, and it is long enough to fit from a 6-inch wrist size up to a 7.5 maximum wrist size. So for the majority of collectors, this is the perfect size, and I really like the finishing and the scent of it. Right, so let's move on to the specifications of the piece. So we have a 42mm case diameter. We have a lug-to-lug measurement of 49.75mm, a thickness of 13.5mm, and a lug width of 21mm. The oyster style bracelet tapers from 21mm at the lugs down to 16mm at the clasp. As I've detailed, this piece uses the original Hanhart logo, and on the clasp it's engraved with high definition engraving. And just to remind you, this is the more contemporary Hanhart wings logo used 50 years ago, and as you can see, it really is subjective. Some collectors would appreciate the wings logo used 50 years ago, as on my 415ES Panda, but however, the original Hanhart logo was this, and this will particularly appeal to purist Hanhart collectors due to the vintage aesthetic. I like both, and I think this one is very beautifully done. We have 3 micro adjustment holes. Now, this is the thing I'm going to be critical of. It's the one negative of this piece subjectively, and I'd like to see Hanhart update this because this is their original clasp. They're using the 2-button push clasp, which is made from solid mill 316L grade stainless steel, but we only have 3 micro adjustment holes in the flanks. Now, they did update this, and on my 415ES you can see it does have a ratcheting mechanism with 10mm on the fly adjustment due to the internal ratcheting mechanism, and this is better. So it's a shame that they did not use this micro adjustment clasp as used on their 415ES, and also they've now updated the Pioneer Preventer HD12 series with this micro adjustment clasp. This was the original clasp they were using on all their pieces with the 3 micro adjustment holes, and many collectors were critical of this, including myself, and they responded to that by updating this clasp to this one, which is the micro adjustment. It's a shame that this is a novelty and it doesn't feature that, and considering the price point, €2,890 on the bracelet, one would expect to see it, but that's the clasp they're using nonetheless. So we have a box top hat double dome sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, and the glare anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the box top hat crystal. Legibility is fantastic. The clarity of this box top hat crystal is stellar. The AR coating is some of the best I've seen. When you look at the piece straight on, it looks like the sapphire crystal is invisible, and it looks very close to the second hand sitting on top of the cannon pinion. The legibility is fantastic because it's very close to the handset, close to the dial, the sub-dials, and also the date complication. So when you look at it straight on, you can read the chronograph complication, the date, and the hands very easily. So legibility is enhanced despite the box top hat crystal adding 2mm of thickness versus a flat sapphire crystal or double domed sapphire crystal. My favourite aspect of this piece, and something that makes it interesting as a limited edition version of the 415ES, is this Mocha Flyback date doesn't have a black dial. Usually Hanhart pieces have black dials or alternatively white dials, such as my Panda 415ES. This one has a chocolate brown tone to it, so the Mocha dial really does look like coffee, and I really like the look of the chocolate brown because it's not a glossy enamel finish as per a glossy enamel black dial, but it's not a matte satin finish either. It's got a slight sheen to it, but it's subtle. And the chocolate brown is very dark. The mocha tone of it almost looks black. In some low light conditions, the dial looks black, but when you tilt the piece at an oblique angle and it catches the light, you actually see it's got a lovely, rich, dark chocolate brown colour. The mocha tone is just above black. It really does look very dark chocolate brown. So it's good. I think it looks rich, but it doesn't look too brown, too light brown. I think the dark tone of it gives it a high-end feel. Contrast of the white Arabic numerals is excellent, and what I like about it is they've updated the quality of the super Lume they're using. Previously, when I reviewed the Pioneer Preventer HD12, I reviewed both the black and blue versions side by side. I was highly critical of the performance of the Super Luminova because I said it lacked potency and the exciter needed to be improved. Hanhart took that criticism on board, and I want to give due credit to them for this because they then upgraded the quality of the Super Luminova they're using throughout their collection. This piece, the 417ES Mocha Flyback date, does have upgraded Super Luminova. It uses X2 C1 versus using BGW9 or alternatively C3, which are the industry standards. X2 C1 has higher potency and they've applied more layers on the Arabic numerals, so I'm looking forward to doing the Lume test and seeing better performance. So it's good to see a brand respond to criticism. When I review a piece and I'm heavily critical, for example in the Lume test of the lack of performance, 5 to 6 layers, it's nice to see a brand respond and do something about it. So X2 C1 is better. Quality of the printing is fantastic. What I like about it is the vintage font of the large Arabic numerals, and also the chaptering is clearly printed with high definition in printing in white, and also the Arabic numerals have the vintage font. Also I like the layout of the dial because it's not over-branded with the necessary text or specification. We have the original Hanhart vintage logo, 23 jewels beneath it, as per their original vintage pieces. And at 6 o'clock, it has shockproof. Now, shockproof is good, and they're right to be proud of it, because this is powered by the Sellita caliber AMT 5100M, which, as I've detailed, is made by Sellita's manufacturer AMT department. They specialise in making their high-end calibers, and it is a shockproof caliber, so they're right to print that on the dial to be proud of it. Underneath the 30 Arabic numerals on the chaptering, we have made in Germany, and again they're right to be proud of that because this piece is made in Gutenberg in the Black Forest in Germany. Subdials are clearly printed, proportions of the subdial hands are correct, and I like the proportions of the syringe white hands. The white handset, rather than being silver mirror polished hands, adds to the legibility. The legibility of this handset is fantastic because the white syringe hands contrast very well with the mocha brown dial. So symmetry of the dial is good because it's a bi-compact style layout rather than having 3 subdials, and of course we have the date complication at 6. So rather than being a asymmetrical dial, it's a symmetrical dial, and this is something I really like about Hanhart pieces with the bi-compact style layouts. There is space to fill in, cite a date complication at 6. The other thing I like about the dial, and I referred to this in my 415ES Panda review, is the Arabic numerals, because they don't chop off portions of the Arabic numerals. This is the benefit of a bi-compact style. when these subdials are correctly proportioned. They're not too large in diameter, because often with chronograph pieces, brands make the mistake, the fundamental error, of they enlarge the subdials very large, which of course improves legibility, but the problem with that is they then chop off portions of the Arabic numerals. The 10, 2, 8 and 4 Arabic numerals have portions chopped off, and this spoils the aesthetic of the piece and also diminishes the legibility of it. What I like about Hanhart is they don't make that mistake, because the subdials are large enough to be clearly legible. That's the benefit, but they're not too enlarged in order to make the portions of the Arabic numerals at 10, 2, 8 and 4 partially chopped off. They're not obscured by the subdials. That's the point I'm making. So it looks good because the symmetry is good, the aesthetic is good, the legibility is good, but also one has that perfect symmetry of the bicompacts 9 and 3 subdial layouts with a date complication at 6. And again, the date complication deletes the 6 Arabic numeral, but we still have the full 7 and full 5. So it's just a fantastic dial execution, just the right amount of information on it, and I think they deserve credit. It's one of the best Hanhart dial layouts I've seen. What we're looking at here is peak Hanhart. So, box top hat crystal, 2mm thickness, very aesthetically pleasing, looks rather like an acrylic, plexiglass or Hesselite domed crystal, but of course one has the benefit of sapphire crystal being harder and more scratch resistant than the aforementioned, and of course we have the benefit of AR coating. The other thing I really like about this piece, and it's very unusual, is the sapphire crystal glazing in the exhibition case back also has AR coating. This is very unusual. It's nothing unusual to see sapphire crystal glazing, because mineral crystal and sapphire crystal are the two industry standards, regardless of price point, low tier, mid tier, high tier respectively. But it's very rare to see AR coating used on the back of a piece, not just the front. And of course the benefit of the AR coating is you get to see the full beauty of the Sellita caliber AMT 5100M, which is a high-end Sellita caliber. So very good to see it's got AR coating in the back, because you can see that also reduces the glare and the highly reflective nature of the Coats de Genève finishing to the main plate of the caliber. So does a good job of displaying it to its full beauty. Flat profile bevel is the correct choice versus domed profile bezel, because a domed profile really would look like too much curvature to it, because the case has angular profile to the bevels, and I think the box top hat crystal looks good with the fillet edge. So to clarify, a fillet edge on a sapphire crystal is a curved edge, and the other alternatively is a beveled edge, which is flat. So bevel edge works well on a flat sapphire crystal, but when one has a box top hat crystal or double dome sapphire crystal, the credible choice or correct choice is a fillet edge, which is curved. And when one has a fillet edge to a sapphire crystal, it doesn't look good if you have a domed bezel, because there's too much curvature. Curvature on the fillet edge of the sapphire crystal, curvature on the bezel itself. What one needs is a contrast. So what we have here is the contrast. We have a flat profile to the bezel, but a fillet edge to the crystal. It looks very good because it allows the 2mm thickness to project above the low profile flat bezel itself. Mirror polish to the top profile, which is good, mirror polish to the edge, and there's a chamfer which deletes the transition or sharp edge of the flat bezel. Mirror polish to perfection, absolutely gorgeous looking. I really like it. So, case is finished to high tier level. Make no mistake, what we're looking at here is peak Hanhart. This is some of the best case finishing. Over the last 5 years, I have reviewed a plethora of Hanhart pieces, and I can tell you, this is some of the best case finishing I've seen Hanhart ever produce. We're not looking at low tier €0 to €500 case finishing. We're not looking at mid tier €500 to €5,000 price point case finishing. This is high tier 10,000 plus level finishing. It's Rolex level in terms of brush satin finishing, in terms of mirror polishing to the bevels. On the top of the lugs, we have concentric CNC lathe tool machining, which has a beautiful luster to it. Now, then we have these large mirror polished bevels, which are angular. That deletes the sharp edge on the transitions. And then on the flanks, which are low profile because we have a large undercut to the flanks, which deletes some of the meat and therefore reduces the visual impact. And it means the flanks to the case do not look thick and slab-sided as per Tudor Black Bay heritage. But what I like about it, above all else, is the luster. This is the fine grain satin finishing one expects to see on Rolex pieces at 10,000 plus euro, but one has to be magnanimous and one has to be mindful of the fact this is not a 10,000 euro piece. This is only 2,890 euro. It's a mid-tier piece, not a high-tier 10,000 plus euro Rolex level piece. But the brush satin finishing, there is no discernible difference in the quality of the brush satin finishing on the flanks of this case. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus on it. The luster is Rolex level. This just looks like 904L oyster steel. And although it's made from 316L, visually it does look exactly the same in terms of the fine grained satin finishing on the left and the right hand flanks. This really is peak Hanhart. Some of the very best case finishing I've ever seen them do, regardless of price point of their pieces. The very best, peak Hanhart. So case is finished to the highest level. Let's look at the bracelet and end links. So let's check the articulation. Female pitted end links are the correct choice because this does have a slightly longer lug to lug because it's a 42. It's 49.75. Now 48 lug to lug is the sweet spot. So to correct the problem they would have had with male end links, they've made the correct choice of female pitted end links because even though it has a long lug to lug, it allows the end link in the bracelet to pivot beneath the tips of the lugs like so. So even if you have a smaller 6 to 7 inch wrist, you get the perfect fit. And of course this is particularly beneficial on a large wrist, 7 to 8 inches, because you'll see in the wrist shot the fit of this piece is sublime. So female pitted end links articulate freely, don't feel stiff or kink, that's the benefit. Doesn't have excess longitudinal, lateral, side to side or up and down play. Perfect. This is the perfect example, an example to other mid-tier brands between €500 and €5,000 of how to get female pitted end link articulation correct. It's rather like a Tudor Black Bay or Tudor Black Bay 58. It's got that female pitted end link, good articulation, but also it's smooth. It's not stiff, doesn't kink, but articulates freely. The balance is correct. This is a perfect interference fit, something they do very well. Oyster style bracelet, beautiful luster to it. Brushed satin finish to the top side, underside and flanks. Now again, they've made the correct decision and I want to give due credit here because so many mid-tier brands and mid-tier micro brands can't get this correct. There is a clash, and the clash I'm referring to, and I've previously referred to this, but I'll reiterate it for the benefit of those that haven't heard it. Sometimes micro brands and mid-tier brands, they make the mistake of mirror polishing the flanks to the head of the piece, but then they brush satin finish the flanks of the bracelet, so one gets a clash. Alternatively, they brush satin finish the flanks to the head of the piece, but they mirror polish the flanks of the bracelet. There should always be a match. There should be brush satin finish flanks on the head of the piece, brush satin finish flanks to the bracelet, alternatively mirror polish flanks and mirror polish flanks. Hanhart always get it correct. Beautiful luster to the flanks of the head, beautiful luster to the flanks of the bracelet, and I'm pleased to see screw pins used rather than a production cost cutting measure of push pins. 1.2mm screw pins are the correct choice. So beautiful luster to it. Now, in terms of proportions, normally I'd be critical of a piece having a 21 to 16 taper because there are two industry standards. 22 to 18 is one for larger pieces such as 41, 42mm. The other alternative is the perfection personified taper, which I often refer to, which is 20 to 16, as used on my 415ES Panda, and this is the ultimate. This is the perfect bracelet taper for a 39-40 head of the piece. You can see 20 to 16 looks good. It's very aesthetically pleasing, but in terms of proportions, it is stellar. In this case, I'm not going to be critical. So why is that? Because it's 42. So one would say, well, 22 to 18 would be correct, right? But no. It's 42, but the 21 to 16 actually has a nice aggressive taper. They've made the correct decision by widening the lug width. Rather than using 20 to 16, they've made it 21. 22 would have looked slightly too wide because the lugs have a beautiful taper. They've deleted a lot of meat from the lugs, which reduces the visual impact but also enhances comfort level because it does reduce the heft of the piece. And what we've got is these large mirror polished bevels on the transitions. So visually the lugs look nice and slender rather than block and square profiled. But the other thing is they flow nicely into the bracelet because the taper on the lugs with the angled bevels on the top transitions, it flows nicely into the aggressive taper 21 down to 16. So although it's not a 22 to 18 and it's not a 20 to 16 perfection personified industry standard taper, the 21 to 16 on this piece actually looks very good. And also the benefit is the width of the clasp is therefore thinner. Had they used a 22 to 18 taper, of course this would be 18 at the clasp and therefore the clasp would be more bulky. And what they've done is they've reduced the heft of the piece by using a 16 taper because now the clasp is thinner. And of course this does enhance comfort level and feel good factor because the meat of the bracelet is reduced. Even though it's wider at the head of the piece, it's actually thin at the clasp. It's the correct decision. So beautiful luster to it. Let's check the articulation. Articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Fluid. Doesn't have excess longitudinal, lateral, side-to-side play. It's not sloppy, doesn't rattle. No sharp edge to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks. Doesn't pull arm hairs. Looks good, feels good. the luster on this bracelet is Rolex level. Make no mistake, this is not low tier or mid tier finishing. This is high tier, 10,000 plus euro level brushed satin finishing. Peak Hanhart. Let's check the other side for continuity. Female pitted end link articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excess play in any direction, and again, articulates with plenty of articulation, rather like a Tudor Black Bay Heritage or alternatively Black Bay 58. Fantastic. They've got the interference friction fit perfected on this. Smooth, doesn't have excess play, not sloppy. Fantastic. Again, bracelet articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. That's the benefit of screw pins, tightening up the tolerances versus push pins. It's not sloppy, doesn't have excess play, no sharp edge to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks, doesn't pull arm heads. The perfect oyster style bracelet. They deserve full credit for it, and I think it's a very good looking 21-16 taper. So let's look at the clasp. Now, clasp is the only negative, as I've detailed. On a positive note, the luster is fantastic. Beautiful luster to the satin finishing. The engraving is high definition with the original logo. This is fantastic. This will particularly appeal to purists because it's not the winged logo, as you can see, which is 50 years ago. This was the original Hanhart logo. I like both, but this really does give this a vintage aesthetic. 2 button push triggers are correctly proportioned, brushed satin finished, heavily spring loaded, opens freely. Now, solid mill 316L grade stainless steel internals. No sharp corners to the centre section, no sharp edge to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks. Brushed satin finishing is excellent, but there is one fundamental error which is glaring, and I've been critical of this on other Hanhart pieces. They've inverted stainless steel. It's upside down. Now, I'll remind you, I'll reiterate this, the reason why I'm heavily critical of it. The majority of collectors are right-handed, therefore they wear the watch on their left wrist. That's a given. So this is the orientation of the watch when on the left wrist. Then they take it off, turn it around like so, and with their right hand they press the 2 button push triggers with their index finger and thumb, opening it from left to right. So this is the correct orientation for the majority of right-handed collectors. And you can see when it's this way up, stainless steel is now inverted. It's upside down. Now, it's engraved with high definition engraving, which is good, but it's just upside down. So they need to invert this. Now, I was critical of this in my previous reviews, and I still stand by the criticism. This is the kind of error one can be magnanimous about with low-tier pieces. For example, if this were a Chinese-made piece between €0 and €500, one has to expect some production cost-cutting measure, some QC defects, and of course, some mistakes. But not a made-in-Germany piece with heritage and since 1882, and this is €2,890. We're looking at a mid-tier piece. Stainless steel has to be engraved the correct way up. So they need to correct that, simply engrave it upside down or invert it. That's the one error. But let's check the hinge pins. So, left-hand hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excess play in any direction. Centre hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excess play, feels nice and tight. Finally, right-hand hinge pin, which is actually a spring bar, articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excess play in any direction. Excellent. This is an example to other mid-tier brands and mid-tier micro brands for how to get it correct. Left-hand, centre, right-hand hinge pins articulate freely, don't feel stiff or kink, don't have excess play, tolerances are nice and tight. No sharp edges to it, feels comfortable, beautiful luster, low profile, the perfect mill clasp. Just a shame it doesn't have the ratcheting mechanism as per this 415ES Panda with the ratcheting micro adjustment. So that's the only update. I'd like to see them add the updated clasp but retain the vintage Hanhart logo for aesthetic reasons. Right, so let's test the chronograph complication and also the push-pull crown execution. So we'll do the push-pull crown first and then I'll test the chronograph. So solid 316L grade stainless steel coin edge crown. Mirror polished domed cap to it, and excellent attention to detail because it is embossed rather than debossed or engraved with the Hanhart H. What I like about it is it has the vintage Hanhart H in the same font used on the vintage logo on the dial and also the clasp, so good continuity on the 3 places, dial, crown and clasp. The quality of the mirror polishing to the embossing is stellar, no sharp edges, large chamfer which deletes the sharp tips of the coin edge teeth, correctly proportioned. Now, the reason why I say it's correctly proportioned is it is large like a dive watch crown, but in this case I'm not going to be critical because it's not a screw down crown. One does need a large crown because this is a manual wind caliber the AMT 5100M is manual wind, it's not automatic with a rotor. Therefore, this is going to need manual winding, albeit it does have a 58-hour power reserve, so you're only going to need to manually wind it every 3 to 4 days. But it's large enough to be grippy and tactile. One can easily get good purchase with one's index finger and thumb. However, it's not too large, and due to the domed cap on it, or profile, when one flexes the wrist, it doesn't dig into the back of the hand like an oversized dive watch crown fitted to a chronograph piece. So, in terms of manual winding, feels smooth. One can feel the tension in the Sellita caliber AMT 5100M build up to its maximum 58-hour power reserve. Just think about that for a moment. Often chronograph calibers only have a 40 or 42-hour power reserve. 58 hours is well in excess of that. So the benefit of that is, although it doesn't have a rotor and one cannot wind it by wearing it on wrist for 8 to 12 hours per day or on an automatic watch winder, 58 hours extends the power reserve. So that means you only need to manually wind it every 3 to 4 days versus every 2 days, for example, which is good. And it feels smooth. Now, one can feel the tension gradually building up. Now, although it's 58 hours versus, say, 42, one doesn't need to give it 58 clockwise turns. 50 clockwise turns will suffice. When the mainspring is fully exhausted and the movement stops dead, you can manually wind it 50 clockwise turns, and that will bring it up to its maximum 58 hours, which is good. And then you don't need to manually wind it for another 3 to 4 days. So it feels smooth. In terms of smoothness, it feels very similar to manually winding a Sellita caliber SW200-1, which you may be familiar with. It doesn't feel rough or gritty, doesn't feel too stiff, and I like the smoothness of it. It feels very refined. If I had to choose one word to describe it, it would be refinement, because it has that smoothness one gets with high-tier calibers. In terms of smoothness, it feels very similar to the smoothness of my Rolex caliber 3235 used in my Starbucks, which is a chronology movement. It has that very smooth feeling to it. And that's the reason why the Sellita's manufacturer AMT department produces the AMT 5100M. It's the top end. It's the very best of Sellita. The AMT department produce their high-end calibers. So this is a level above the standard SW510 and the SW510M. The AMT 5100M, although it does share similar architecture, the build quality, quality control, materials and finishing and calibration are a level above it. So smoothness is there, refinement is there. So pulling it out to the first click position is the dates, but I'm just going to pull out to the second because I want to move the hand out of the way so you can see the date complication better. So first click position is the quick set date. If you look at the date window at 6, you can see it clicks over with a nice heavy solid click. The refinement of this caliber is fantastic because it's got this nice heavy indexing. The clicking sensation, the loud audible click sounds good but also feels good. You can feel it through the crown, but you can also hear it. It's audible. Feels rather like an it feels rather like a NH35A, that heavy clicking sensation, which sounds good and feels good. It's really satisfying. The alignment is perfect. The single and the double Arabic numerals perfectly align with the left and the right hand side of the date window. The other thing I like about the date window is it's beveled rather than being straight cut. The benefit of the beveling around the date window or the aperture is it reduces the shadow because it allows more light to enter the date wheel, and this reduces the shadow effects both on the single and the doubles. So they align perfectly, not too far to the left or right, not too high or too low. The font used is very aesthetically pleasing but also clearly legible, and it contrasts very well. The white Arabic numerals contrast very well with the mocha or chocolate brown date wheel, which is colour matched to the dial, and the font is very legible. I like the bevels around the date window. Clicks with a nice positive click. In terms of the clicking feeling, it feels heavier than an SW200-1, which you'll all be familiar with. Feels more like an NH35A. It's got that heavy sensation. And one can really feel that the AMT 5100M is a premium caliber, a level above the SW510 and SW510M. Fantastic. So, pulling it out to the second click hacks the movement. And if you look at the second hand on the subdial, you can see it's now stopped dead. So therefore it's possible to set the time precisely to the second. We're now in the time setting position. This is just stellar smoothness. It's one of the smoothest calibers I've experienced. This feels smoother than an SW510 and SW510M, and it's not too stiff, but you can feel the meshing of the gearing is precise. The back play is minimal, and both clockwise and anti-clockwise it feels exactly the same. When you cycle through the 12 hours, it has this smooth feeling to it. Medium resistance, it feels solid, reliable and robust, but not too much friction. Doesn't feel rough or gritty. What I like about it above all else, when you rotate the coin edge crown, there's an almost immediate response to the syringe minute hand. You don't need to take up a lot of slack. It has noticeably less slack than an SW200-1, for example. And you don't have to take up the slack in the teeth of the winding gears. It's precision. And this really does feel similar to operating my Rolex caliber 3235 chronology movement used in my Starbucks. It's got that high-end feel. Feels like a 10,000 plus euro price point caliber. That's the feeling of it. And actually feels quite similar to an Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch, alternatively a Rolex Daytona. That's the feeling of it in terms of refinement. The smoothness, the medium resistance to it. Doesn't feel too heavy, doesn't feel too light. Minimal backplay. Just feels really precise. So pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click. That reinstates the 100 meters of hermetic seal, which is good for a chronograph. And you can see the second hand begins to sweep around the sub-dial at 9 o'clock position with a characteristic smooth 4 Hz sweep. What I like about the movement is it runs at 4 Hz, which is 28,800 vibrations per hour. So visually, one gets the positive of the second hand on the 9 o'clock sub-dial, doesn't stutter or judder as per a 3 Hz sweep, running at 21,600 vibrations per hour. 4 Hz is the perfect balance. From a technical perspective, I regard 4 Hz as the ultimate. When one increases power reserve, often one has to sacrifice accuracy. That's the negative. If one refines accuracy, often one has to reduce the power reserve in order to attain chronometer limits. That's the negative. So one has to strike a balance between accuracy and power reserve. 3 Hz is often used because if one reduces the beat rate of a movement to 21,600 vibrations per hour and 3 Hz, one can extend the power reserve, but of course one loses accuracy as a result. So often high power reserve chronograph calibers like this with 58 hours will run at 3 Hz versus 4 Hz for the aforementioned reason. But Hanhart have made the correct decision in selecting the Sellita caliber AMT 5100M. The other credible alternative would have been the Sellita caliber SW510M. The M denotes manual, so it's the manual one version of the SW510, which is the automatic. The automatic would have been too thick with a rotor. They could have cut production costs with this piece in order to maximise profit margin per piece by using the SW510M, but they didn't. They went for the high grade option, the very best of Sellita, the AMT 5100M, made by Sellita's manufacturer AMT department. It's thin, that's the point. This piece is only 13.5, even though it has a box top pack crystal which adds 2mm of thickness to it. 13.5 does impress me. That's the benefit of using the AMT 5100M. It's thinner. So, time setting works well, hacking works well, quick set date complication works well, smoothness is refined. It's fantastic. I absolutely love this caliber. The very best of Sellita. So, let's test the chronograph complication. Top pusher activates the chronograph. Now, if you look at the chronograph hand, you can see it sweeps around smoothly. Nice crisp action to it. In terms of resistance, it does feel heavier than an Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch, which you may be familiar with. It's got that crisp, positive feeling, the resistance, rather like a Rolex Daytona. Now, one has to appreciate, the Rolex Daytona does have screw-down collars around the pushers, but the crisp action of the actual pusher itself is what I'm referring to. It's got that heavy, spring-loaded, crisp action. You have to push it hard, but once you become accustomed to it, it actually becomes very satisfying because it's got a loud, audible click. And you can feel the click and hear the click. And you push it hard, but then it's got this crisp click, and that denotes the start of the chronograph. Stopping it, again, nice crisp click. Starting it, nice crisp click. Stopping it. It's just so satisfying. The refinement is there. I like the heavily spring-loaded action because it tells me that it's going to be reliable and robust long-term with daily use. Now, lower pusher, which is red because it's coated in high ceram. So to explain what this is, high ceram contains ceramic particles. So rather than just painting it red with red paint or using enamel, what they do is they use high ceram, and this is trademarked by Hanhart, and because it's proprietary, and the paint or the coating actually contains ceramic particles. And of course we're all familiar with ceramic because it's used in bezel inserts, for example. It's hard and scratch resistant. When you coat a pusher like this with ceramic particles, this high ceram means it's going to be hard. So unlike red paint or alternatively enamel coating, it's not going to wear off, or rather like red anodizing, which would have been the other option, it's not going to wear or patinate with time. In 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, this high ceram pusher is still going to look brand new. Now the origin of it, or the legend of it, is there is a legend that pilots, The girlfriend of a pilot painted the pusher on his watch in order to remind him of her when he was flying, and she used red nail varnish. But the red pusher actually became a practical thing, and it was introduced into Hanhart pieces because previously pilots used chronographs for navigation purposes, and of course it was dangerous if they accidentally during a flight pressed the wrong pusher. The top pusher starts and stops the chronograph, which is used for navigation, but for example if they accidentally pressed the lower pusher and activated the flyback while flying, that would reset the chronograph hand, which would be dangerous. They'd lose the navigation. So they began to use red pushers, and of course this is good because you can immediately tell the top pusher starts and stops the chronograph because it's silver. The lower pusher is red, which obviously activates the flyback. So we'll test the flyback, we'll reset and then we'll test the flyback. Pushing the lower pusher, nice crisp action. Resets, bang on 60, bang on the centre of the 12 o'clock Arabic numerals. Now, this is a flyback, so what that means is while the chronograph's running, normally with a chronograph piece, you have to stop the chronograph before you can reset. With a flyback, while it's running, you can fly back. So this is good. You don't need to stop the chronograph in order to restart it, like so. So at any position, the chronograph hand is now running. It's not static. I can simply press the lower pusher and activate the flyback. And when one presses the flyback, it resets the chronograph hand bang on the 60 on the chaptering, bang on the centre of the 12 o'clock Arabic numerals on the dial. So the alignment is correct. So one can either press the top pusher and stop the chronograph in the conventional manner, then reset, and again resets bang on 60, or alternatively with the chronograph running, I'm just going to let it run further, one can reset simply while it's running. That's the benefit of a flyback complication. So if you're timing, for example, you can reset a plethora of times without needing to stop and start the chronograph and reset. You can reset while it's running. So there you can see, while it's running, one can reset and it continues to run. Particularly useful for timing. For example, if you're timing a series of events, 30 seconds, you can simply fly back when the chronograph hand hits 30, back to 0. So excellent, and the chronograph works well. Nice frame resistance to the top pusher and the lower pusher. Flyback works excellent, alignment is correct. Stellar. The refinement of this AMT 5100M really is the very best of Sellita. It's a high grade calibre, adds value to the piece. Right, so let's look at the Sapphire Crystal Exhibition caseback. So, as I've detailed, this caseback, it's glazed with sapphire crystal as one would expect, but it's got AR coating, like the front of the piece. Very unusual to see this, as I've detailed. Often sapphire crystal glazing in exhibition casebacks doesn't have AR coating. Now you can see the benefit. That's a fantastic job of displaying that high-end Sellita manufacture AMT department calibre. Just beautiful. So, stainless steel portion of it is engraved with the unique serial number, which is the limited edition number. This is number 132 of 200 limited edition pieces. 10 ATM denotes the water resistance. And we've got Handorf-Zug, which is hand winding in German. So it's Handorf-Zug flyback. And then we've got 417ES. And then we've got H721L. So specification is engraved around the circumference. Mirror polishing is excellent. Milled slots are deburred and chamfered. And what I like about it, above all else, it's 100 metres of hermetic seal. But look how low profile it is. It's very flat. This is not a deep bubble back caseback. And again, I want to give due credit to Hanhart here, because what we're looking at is correct decision after correct decision. They could have used the Sellita SW510, which is the automatic version, or the SW510M, which is the manual. But had they used the automatic, the SW510, as an alternative, it has a rotor, and this piece would be an additional 1.5mm thick. And of course, it's 13.5, but that would make it 15. With a box top hat crystal. Far too thick. It would be top heavy, like a thick slab of 316L grade stainless steel, therefore comfort level and feel good factor would be diminished. Look how flat and low profile this caseback is, because it's not a deep bubble back caseback like an SW510 automatic powered piece. It's very low profile. The sapphire crystal glazing is so close to the main plate, it actually looks like it's touching it. And you can see, yes, it does look beautiful, but the point is it reduces the thickness of this piece. We still have 100 metres of hermetic seal. They've made the correct decision by not using a solid stainless steel caseback here, because it fully displays the decoration of the AMT 5100M. Because we've got Coats Digenève finishing to it, milled stripes, and then we've got blued screws on it, and you can see it's absolutely gorgeous. This is a level above the SW510M, make no mistake. The Salita manufacture AMT department, this is the very best. So Expedition caseback looks good, also feels good because it's flat. And they could have just used a pressed on caseback with 50 meters or a screw down caseback with 50. 100 with an Expedition caseback gives the piece a high end feel. Perfectly smooth. Engraving doesn't feel sharp, doesn't feel rough, but it's high definition. And nice to see it's number 132 of 200. This confirms it's a limited edition. End links, I have quick release stainless steel spring bars, which are the correct choice because again, that negates the need for a spring bar tool, makes it easy to exchange the oyster style bracelet for a strap, and then links to a good tight fit to the head of the piece. Underside to the head of the piece has flawless mirror polishing, and we've got large mirror polished bevels on the undercuts to the flanks which delete the sharp edges. So this is the very best case finishing I've seen on Hanhart pieces, regardless of price point, the very best. This is peak Hanhart, make no mistake, one of the greatest finished cases they've ever made. And I've reviewed a plethora of their watches in 5 years. This is one of the very best. Fantastic. So, I'll give you a wrist shot. Now, just bear with me. I'll take off my 415 ES Panda, and then I'll continue. Now, I haven't sized this bracelet, and we're on position 3 out of 3 on the micro adjustment holes on the flanks. So this is its absolute maximum wrist size. And you can see it comes on a very long bracelet. I can easily slide my index finger beneath the bracelet and clasp at all times. Now, this denotes this would fit up to a very large 9-inch wrist size because with an index finger, it will fit up to 8.5 inches, but it's loose. And we are on position 3 out of 3. So this would fit up to a 9-inch wrist size. So to clarify, there are enough removable links on the 6 o'clock side and the 12 o'clock side of the bracelet to size this down to 6 inches, up to maximum 9. Now, as I've detailed, the only negative is the lack of on-the-fly adjustment. It's a shame that they did not use this, which is their micro adjustment clasp, and they did update the Pioneer Preventer HD12, which previously used the standard clasp. It now uses the micro adjustment clasp. You can see it has the ratcheting mechanism with button push trigger, 10mm on the fly adjustment. This is stellar. This is the very best of Hanhart. And you can see this one has the winged logo, but this is what I would like to have seen fitted to this. They've got the original Hanhart logo. So retain the Hanhart logo, the vintage one, rather than winged logo. But micro adjustment clasp would be beneficial in the absence of half links. The other thing they could have done is add a half link on the 6 side and a half link on the 12 side of the bracelet, because sometimes adding or subtracting one full oyster style link from an oyster style bracelet like this doesn't give the desired fit. The bracelet feels slightly too tight or slightly too loose. Half links are therefore beneficial. The other benefit is when resizing a bracelet, if one needs to remove one full link, one can remove a half link plus a half link to get the one full link, and that retains the symmetry because the clasp then sits central on the wrist. It doesn't sit too far to the 6 or too far to the 12 offset. But ideally, the solution is, in the absence of half links and the absence of more micro adjustment holes, a micro adjustment clasp is the solution, which of course they did implement on my 415 ES. You can see the clasp is longer because it needs to house the ratcheting mechanism, and it's also thicker, but the benefit is we have 10mm on the fly adjustment, and of course this does benefit from half links. We have a half link on the 6 and a half link on the 12, therefore the fit can be perfected. So that's the one negative I want you to be mindful of. It's a shame that they did not include the micro adjustment clasp, but taper is good. 16 is slender, and I like the taper aggressive. 21 down to 16, it's not perfection personified, 20 to 16, but that is correct because this is a larger 42. We're not looking at a 39, 40 or 41 here. 42 does have some serious wrist presence. So, comfort level and feel good factor, fantastic. That may come as a surprise to you because this is 42. Yes, it's clearly intended for collectors with a larger wrist size, that's a given. I would say to you, if you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist, you can rule this piece out because needless to say, 42 is too large. A 39 will fit you better, that's a given. But if you have a larger 7 to 8 inch plus wrist size, you will enjoy the wrist presence. Yes, it does dominate the wrist, but the point is, it does not feel top heavy like a thick slab of 316L grade stainless steel. The meat has been deleted from the flanks of the case. Now, the benefit of this piece being powered by the AMT caliber 5100M is it's a thinner caliber. There is no rotor as per the SW510 automatic. This is only 13.5, which is a pleasant surprise, and as I've detailed, had they used the SW510 automatic, this would be 15mm, far too thick. We still have 58 hours power reserve, that's the point. So high power reserve, they haven't sacrificed that by using a thinner calibre, but the lack of the rotor, because it's manual wind, that reduces the thickness of this piece by 1.5. It's not 15, it's only 13.5. Even though it has a 2mm thick box top hat crystal, which of course does give the piece a vintage aesthetic, rather like an acrylic crystal. So it's deceptive. One would expect this to be 14 or 14.5, but it's only 13.5. But yes, it is large diameter at 42. I enjoy the wrist presence of it. However, there is something to note. It does have some serious heft. However, one has to be magnanimous. 174 grams. Now, it is 24 grams in excess of the 150 gram sweet spots that I often refer to. For 39, 40 or 41, 150 grams or below is the sweet spot. This is 42, so one has to be magnanimous and expect it to be above 150. However, I would expect it to be circa 160 to 165 with a 21 to 16 taper. They really need to reduce the heft slightly on this piece. Now, of course, if they had the micro adjustment clasp, yes, that's going to add some additional heft, 5 to 10 grams. However, it does come on a very long bracelet to fit up to a 9-inch wrist size. Even I would remove 1 to 2 links from this bracelet, and of course that's going to reduce it to circa 160 to 164, but we're still above the 150 sweet spot. I think for a collector with a large wrist, it's not going to be a concern because it does give a nice feeling of quality. I like the feeling of heft. However, the detriment of it is long periods of time. If you wear this piece for 8 to 12 hours per day, you're going to find 160 to 165 grams to be in excess of the 150. So again, if you're a collector with a 6 to 7 inch wrist, I think you can rule it out due to heft, but also diameter, wrist presence. There's another notable dimension I want you to be mindful of. The lug to lug on this is long, as one would expect. Now, 48mm is the sweet spot, regardless of case size, 39, 40, 41, 42. I often refer to it. The reason why 48 is the industry standard and also the sweet spot is because it is the perfect lug to lug regardless of case size. It fits 6 to 7 and 7 to 8 inch plus wrist sizes to perfection. That's why I refer to it as the sweet spot. This one is longer because it's 49.75, so it's 1.75 longer, nearly 2mm longer than the sweet spot. Again, if you have a 6 to 7, it's going to have too much overhang on the tips of the angular lugs, as you can see. On my 8-inch wrist size, it is okay, but only just okay. I would prefer it to be a more compact 48. They could have made the case shorter by 1.75mm. That would enhance comfort level and feel good factor for larger 7 to 8 inch wrists. On my large 8-inch wrist, the lugs do have some slight overhang. Now, it's okay on an 8-inch plus wrist size, but I think if you're at this 7-inch size, you're going to find the gap and also the length of the case slightly too long by that 1.75mm. On a 6 to 7-inch wrist, you're going to definitely find the case to be too long and also too large. But if you enjoy Flieger style watches, pilot's watches, which have wrist presence, and one has to appreciate Fliegers are large, they're 41 and 42. This is a 42. It does give the aesthetic of a Flieger, but this is made in collaboration with Porsche Driver magazine, so it's not meant to be a pilot's watch or Flieger watch, although it does have the aesthetic of it, because they've deleted the fluted bezel with red marker on it. And it's got a smooth bezel, so it more has the aesthetic of an Omega Speedmaster, alternatively a Rolex Daytona, which of course have tachymeter scales on the bezel, but the smooth bezel gives it a more sport look. It looks more like a watch used for driving, and that's the point of it. Hanhart made this in collaboration with Porsche Driver magazine as a driver's watch. So rather than having a fluted bezel, which wouldn't have been appropriate, they've got this smooth bezel, which gives it a more sports look. And I think they've made the correct decision here by not using a tachymeter scale, or alternatively a fluted bezel, as per their regular chronographs. The smooth bezel does give it a more sport look. But so, aesthetically pleasing. One does still have the chronograph complication, and of course date complication, which is practical, and the flyback complication, which is good. So it looks good. I like it. I think it's aesthetically pleasing, but 42 clearly for larger wrist sizes. Does feel like a balanced piece. It's a pleasant surprise because the clasp doesn't have the ratcheting mechanism, so it doesn't have as much heft as the bulky clasp used on my 4 and 5 ES, which is longer, deeper and wider. Well, actually not wider because it's 16, but the point is it has more meat to it. But actually feels very well balanced because of the aggressive taper, 21 to 16. Looks similar to a Perfection Personified 20 to 16 taper. Luster is fantastic. Surprisingly wearable. It's 13.5, so it is still going to slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. 13 and below is the sweet spot to slip underneath a shirt cuff. 13.5 is marginally above that. It's only 0.5 above it, so it will just slip underneath a shirt cuff, even though it has a 2mm box top hat crystal. Comfort level and feel good factor is stellar due to the flat case back. So it is low profile, 13.5, albeit it does feel large and of course does have some serious heft, 174. So you can really feel it, but looks fantastic with the chocolate brown Mocha dial. Great looking piece. Right, so let's do a lume test. Just bear with me. I'm going to put back on my 415ES Panda and then I'll continue. So as I've detailed, previously I was heavily critical of the Pioneer Preventer HD12, the blue and the black versions, because of the lack of potency to the exciter. And Hanhart took that criticism on board and they did something about it, which they deserve credit for. So they updated the super luminator they're using. This one is powered by X2C1 as an alternative to C3 or BGW9, which are the industry standards. So X2 adds potency to the exciter. C1 has a whiter green tone than green C3. Right, so as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. So X2C1 on the dial and on the Arabic numerals, and X2C1 on the syringe handset. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. We are clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers on the Arabic numerals, 5 to 6 layers on the syringe handset. They've even loomed the chronograph hand. Stellar performance. Compare this to the lack of potency to the exciter on the Pioneer Preventer HD12, the blue and the black versions I reviewed side by side. I was heavily critical because the Super Lume Nova lacked potency. It did not look like a full 5 to 6. This one has it, and they've made the correct choice here by upgrading to X2C1. X2 adds potency to the exciter. C1 is a lighter tone than C3. It's a lighter green, more whiter. And you can see, even application, if you look at the Arabic numerals, they are large, the font is sharp and crisp. It's vintage fonts, but the point is, it's large enough to allow for 5 to 6 layers to be printed on the dial. If you look at the application on the syringe hands, both the arrow and minute hands, it's even. In daylight, they look white. They don't look more cream or white on the dial and hands. So in daylight, perfect white colour tone match. In the dark, perfect green colour tone match. This is definitely a level above the performance of the Arabic numerals and the handsets used on the Pioneer Preventer HD12s, which I previously reviewed. They have improved it. And they've also added Super Lume Nova to the chronograph hand, which is a pleasant surprise. The benefit of this having a bi-compact style layout, as I've detailed, is they haven't enlarged the dials on the sub-dials too large at 9 and 3. They haven't chopped off portions or obscured the 10, 2, 8 and 4 Arabic numerals. So it's good. It is a level above the other Super Lume Nova they were using. I think X2C1 is the correct choice. The C1 is lighter green. I like the green tone of C3 for aesthetic reasons because it does look like Tritium Lume, which of course was discontinued and succeeded by Luminova and then Super Lume Nova. Tritium was radioactive and it succeeded radium, which was more radioactive, but the problem with tritium is it patinates, it develops a patina. Now, from a collector's perspective, tritium does look aesthetically pleasing because it develops a peach tone to it, which is good. But from performance perspective, the problem is the half-life of it degrades with time, and of course, the potency of the exciter degrades. So, Luminova and then Super Luminova were better. They're not radioactive, but they still have potency. But this does have a similar green tone look to it, to tritium. And I like the look of it. That's the point. Just bear with the camera struggling to autofocus. There we are. But if you look at this and compare it to the performance on the Pioneer Preventer HD12s I reviewed, this is definitely a level above it. 5 to 6 on the hands, 5 to 6 on the Arabic numerals. Legibility is good. And one has to appreciate this is a chronograph. We're not looking at a dive watch. But I really like it. So, correct choice. Rather than using C3 or BGW9, they've chosen X2C1. And I am pleased they've responded to my criticism rather than just continuing to use poor quality Super Lume Nova on their Pioneer Preventer HD12s and the other pieces such as the 415ES and 417, for example. Fantastic. So they've made improvements. They deserve credit for that. Beautiful. Even application, potency of the exciter is good. Longevity is good. 5 to 6 on the Arabic numerals, 5 to 6 on the hands. Very good. Right, so let's discuss the movement use because it's my favourite aspect of the piece. So, as I've detailed, to remind you, this is not powered by a Sellita caliber SW510M, as one would expect. This is powered by the Sellita caliber AMT 5100M. Sellita's manufacturer AMT department make that. It's the very best of Sellita. The AMT department make their high-end calibers. So, this is a switching wheel caliber with flyback complication. It has 23 joules, it runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. 58-hour power reserve is excellent, better than the standard 42. Hand winding and hacking, which work well as I've demonstrated. Also has a quick set date complication, which works well, and a 30-minute counter on the subdial. Hanhart are regulating the caliber in 6 positions, to 0 to plus 8 seconds per day. Excellent. To get a chronograph caliber with 58 hours but still retain 0 to plus 8 seconds per day is fantastic. Excellent power reserve, excellent accuracy. This one is running consistently at 2 seconds per day. Just think about it for a moment. 58-hour power reserve means you only need to manually wind this every 3 to 4 days. That's the benefit. But it still retains chronometer-like accuracy. Chronometer limits are -4 to +6. This is running 0 to +8. +2 when fully wound to its maximum 58-hour power reserve, regulated in 5 positions, made by Sellita's manufacturer AMT department. So this is the very best of Sellita. Now in terms of decoration, it's fantastic. This is better decorated, better finished than the Sellita SW510M, although it does have similar architecture. On the main plates, we've got milled stripes, which are like Coats de Genève or Geneva stripes, blued screws, and these are proper blued screws. They are heat treated. We're not looking at painted blue screws. We're not looking at anodized blued screws. These are heat treated blue. And you can see, it's just absolutely stellar. The finishing to this movement is high end. Make no mistake, this is the kind of finishing one expects with a piece powered by a switch wheel chronograph caliber with a flyback complication, but at the €10,000+ price point. So I regard it as equal to the calibers used in the Rolex Daytona. I regard it as equal to the calibers used in the Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch. That's the level we're looking at here. This is not low tier, €0 to €500 level. This is not mid tier, €500 to €5,000, albeit this is a mid tier piece at €2,890. This is the kind of caliber I would expect to see in a €10,000+ piece. It's not an SW510M. This is not standard Sellita. This is AMT 5100M, Sellita's manufacturer AMT department. Build quality, quality control, materials and finishing are therefore higher grade. Mirror polishing, bevels, brushed satin finishing, every aspect of the finishing is top grade. It's just incredible. In terms of finishing, it's a level above the Elaboré grade. It's a level above top grade and chronometer grade. It really is the ultimate Sellita caliber. The AMT calibers are the very best. So I like everything about it. And we have 23 joules engraved and Swiss. Mirror polishing is fantastic to it. Coats de Genève finishing is fantastic. Blue screws is fantastic. So they've just done a very good job of it. And it's excellent to see the AR coating on the underside of the sapphire crystal, which enhances it because you can see it clearly. If this did not have AR coating, which is the industry standard, you get a lot of reflection and glare, but because of the AR coating on the sapphire crystal glazing, you can actually see it to its full beauty. Just mesmerising. One of the best looking manual wind calibers I've seen, and a switch wheel caliber with flyback complication, which is technically excellent. 58 hours, 0 to +8. Is there any negative to it? None whatsoever. It's one of the very best Sellita calibers ever made. So I like everything about it. Now, above all else, what I like about it is how thin it is. That's the point. That's the real benefit of it. Because, as I've detailed, if this was powered by the SW510 automatic, this would be 1.5mm thicker. And it's a 42, so one has to expect some thickness with a box top out crystal. But this would be 15, far too thick. Hanhart have selected the correct caliber in the AMT 5100M because it's thinner, doesn't have a rotor, rather like the SW510M. And this is only 13.5, even though it has an exhibition case back, 100 metres, and a box top hat crystal with 2mm of thickness. It's still only 13.5, which does impress me. 58 hours, but only 13.5. That's the real benefit of this caliber. But still 0 to 8 seconds per day accuracy. This one is +2. Fantastic choice of movement. The movement alone fully justifies the price point of this piece. 2,890. I actually think Hanhart have undervalued this piece because it's 5,000, 6,000 level quality, but 2,890 retail. The only negative is the clasp, as I've detailed. I'd like to see the micro adjustment clasp as used on my 415 ES Panda, which is better. But one has to be magnanimous because they've upgraded the movement from the 510 up to the AMT 5100M, which is a level above it. So last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch will meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So, mid-tier piece, mid-tier is 500 to 5,000 euro respectively. On the bracelet, it is 2,890 euro. On the leather bund strap, it is 2,690 euro respectively. So I'm going to evaluate it based on the bracelet, which is fitted to the head of the piece. Yes, this is unquestionably excellent quality. Yes, this is unquestionably excellent value at 2,890 euro. This is undervalued. The correct price point of this piece should be 5,000 or 6,000 euro. Not 2,890. Hanhart have undervalued it purely because of the caliber. This AMT 5100M is the kind of caliber I would expect in a 10,000 plus euro price point piece. Not a mid-tier piece, even at the upper end of the mid-tier at 5,000. This caliber is a level above the SW510 and the SW510M. Make no mistake about it. So, caliber fully justifies it. I appreciate they've had to cut some production costs because of the additional cost of the caliber, so they've done that in the correct area by the clasp. And rather than using the micro adjustment clasp, they've cut production costs in order to reduce the retail price by using the original 3-hole micro adjustment clasp, as you can see. So the clasp is the one negative, and I'm being highly critical here. I'm trying to find fault with the piece because it is stellar. It is difficult to find fault with it. Clasp is the only thing I'd change. I'd retain the original Hanhart logo, but just update it to the winged micro adjustment clasp, you can see. But other than the clasp, this is a faultless piece. The Mocha chocolate brown dial is just absolutely gorgeous. And what I like about it is they've upgraded the Lume to X2C1, which is the one thing I was critical of with their previous pieces, such as the Pioneer Preventer HD12, as I've detailed. What we're looking at here is peak Hanhart. This is one of the greatest Hanhart pieces ever made. The case finishing on this piece is Rolex level. It's 10,000 plus euro level. It's one of the best finishes, one of the best finished head of the pieces I've seen. In the 5 years of reviewing Hanhart pieces, a plethora of pieces, this has some of the best brushed satin finishing, some of the best mirror polishing I've seen on any of their watches. It's peak Hanhart. The other thing that adds value to this piece is it's a limited edition of 200 numbered pieces made in collaboration with Porsche Driver magazine. Of course, that appeals to purist Hanhart collectors, but it also makes it highly desirable because it's only 200 pieces. So, excellent piece. I'm going to declare it a champagne watch for lemonade money. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Hanhart 417ES Mocha Flyback date. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.